Hi, you guys. I'm sorry I am not there with you today. I am actually feeling really terrible, but hope that you can still have a productive day of learning. I'm going to try to get back there as quickly as I possibly can. Today, I want us to start learning how to write a rhetorical précis, is how you pronounce that. And rhetorical précis is really just kind of the academic name for a very specific kind of rhetorical analysis paragraph. It's a paragraph that's really 4 to 5 sentences long, and it has a clear 4 step process that's supposed to go in this particular order. This is a strategy that you'll use in lots of classes, particularly when you get to college. A lot of the times when you're asked to like read and respond to or read and summarize an argumentative text or a text that's meant to be persuasive, the rhetorical précis is kind of the gold standard in how you would go about writing it. So today I'm going to ask you to write your first rhetorical précis using the information that you already generated from your close read of I Have a Dream. In this mini lesson, I am going to just kind of explain to you what a rhetorical précis is, show you a couple of examples from the real world, and then also show you the example that I wrote from my section of I Have a Dream. That's probably going to be the best example for you as you're working on writing your own today. Okay, so when writing a rhetorical précis, there's a 4 sentence structure. Now, I know I said that it can be 4 to 5 sentences long, and that's because sometimes one of these sections ends up being more than one sentence, just so it's not like as long or redundant of a sentence itself, and that's fine. If it expands to 5 or 6 sentences, there's not a problem with that. It should still just follow this like 4 part structure. The first sentence or section of your rhetorical précis is a contextualized introduction of the text. So it has to include the name of the author, the genre and the title of the work, its date of publication. Sometimes people also add like additional information about the speaker or the text or the publication. So, for example, you could write that like Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech in August of 1963 to introduce the author, but you could also say Martin Luther King Jr., a highly renowned civil rights activist, right, delivered the speech I Have a Dream in August of 1963. And that section where I said, a renowned civil rights activist is optional information. You're not required to have it. If we're thinking about additional information that you might want to add about the event itself, you could add that he delivered the speech at the March on Washington, at the Lincoln Memorial. Those are things that you're welcome to add, but not necessarily required to. The second part of that first sentence is your articulation of the argument of the work. So if we're writing this about the whole speech, it would be the overall argument, but since you're writing it about your section, it'll be the argument of that particular section. And it should, of course, use a rhetorically accurate verb. There are some listed here for your reference. The second sentence is really the rhetorical part. So the second sentence is an explanation of how the author develops or supports their message. And so this should move in chronological order. If you're working through the whole speech, ideally I'd like for you to choose an organizational structure that works best for your section for this particular assignment. So it might say, that he develops his argument through the use of metaphorical language and give some examples of that, allusions to important American texts, and loaded language like whatever and whatever to highlight his point that whatever. The third sentence articulates the author's purpose, and then it also has it in order too. So if you're saying his purpose is to highlight the failure of the Emancipation Proclamation in order to, mobilize the audience to do this thing. Sometimes sometimes the purpose is already your in order to. So if you say like the Martin Luther King Jr.'s purpose is to unify the audience, you would definitely want to say in order to convince them to continue to fight for racial justice. But if you said the author's purpose is to mobilize the audience to continue to fight for social justice, you would not need an additional in order to. Hopefully that's clarifying. And then in the fourth sentence, we usually articulate the tone of the text and the intended audience if that wasn't already clear. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time talking about the next two examples. This slideshow is available to you in the assignment, and so you are welcome to like look at them more carefully or more closely. But for the sake of time, I actually just want to focus on this last slide, which is my example from my section. I want you to notice that I contextualize this speech by talking about the paragraphs that I'm referring to. So in paragraphs 2 through 5 of his speech, I Have a Dream in 1963, the civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. argues, and then there I have my argument that America has failed to fulfill the promise of freedom. Then I have that he develops this argument by, and I included some specific reference to the text, but mostly because I was able to just pull tiny little chunks. The next part is the purpose, is to highlight and critique the broken promises of American democracy. And then I have my in order to press for justice and mobilize his listeners. And then I noted that his tone shifts from condemning to hopeful. He speaks to an immediate audience of black and white civil rights activists. That does not actually need to be capitalized. I don't know why it is. Of black and white civil rights activists gathered at the Capitol Mall, while also addressing a broader American audience who would see the speech on television, ultimately urging them all to recognize injustice and continue the struggle for equality. So this is really a model for what I want you to do with your section. Tell us what paragraphs you're writing about. You're welcome to like work with each other on these, but I do want everybody to practice writing their own. This is going to be kind of the standard response to the text that we're going to study for the next few iterations as we continue to work on improving our academic analysis skills, both in terms of reading carefully and closely and noticing those rhetorical strategies in use, and then also working to practice how do we actually write rhetorical analysis in a sophisticated and academic way. Hopefully this is helpful. This slideshow will be in the assignment too, so just look for the link to it so that you can look back at it as a further example. Have a great day.